Next up, we have the government segment. I'm your host for that one, Nick Barber, and we'll be talking to Leesa Perazzo. Leesa is a member of the Schenectady City Council, and she dropped by to talk about city government and the City of Schenectady's adoption of its proposed budget. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Impact. I'm Nick Barber, your host for the government segment today, and our special guest is Leesa Perazzo. And Leesa is a member of the Schenectady City Council. How are you, Leesa?
I'm great.
Thanks
Happy
for
Halloween.
coming. Yeah, happy Halloween.
Thank
I love
you.
your outfit.
Oh, well,
That's great.
Little
Yeah.
orange.
Yeah.
Never hurt anybody.
Yeah. On a more serious note, a lot of things going on in the city of Schenectady, the Schenectady City Council business. The budget's a big one. I'm glad you could join us for a few minutes today. Can you tell us a little bit about what the latest budget issues are? What's going on with the city?
Sure. Well, I think all municipalities are facing just unprecedented times. You know, and it's just reduction in state aid and unfunded mandates and just all of these things that have to be factored in. And then we have our pension costs rising and healthcare costs rising, and we're having to do with less and less and less all the time. And I think that the mayor came out with a really good, solid budget. Mm-hmm. But I think it was the council's job to really pick it apart and save the taxpayers as much money as we could. And we brought it from about a 4.1 and change increase in tax to under 2% last night. We brought it down to 1.7. It was very difficult. We met dozens of times with various departments. We went line by line by line in the budget.
A long process, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Budget
it's
review.
really hard to tell our city personnel that they can't have raises because they work really hard. You know, when you look at something like Hurricane Sandy, and I understand we dodged a bullet, but everybody was ready to go.
Well, the preparedness took resources. Just to prepare it took resources, right?
As they were with Irene. And, there's not always overtime involved for the various managers within our public works department. And, I mean, everybody works really hard, and it's hard to say no raises. But
and then you have your department heads are fighting to keep their budgets alive and try to keep in what they can. So
but
it's a real push-pull.
In walking door to door last year during my campaigning efforts, the number one thing that everyone spoke of was their concern for the amount of taxes that we pay. And I'm a single income homeowner, so I totally feel that. It's scary to me too.
Yes.
So, we worked really hard, and all of us gave input, and we ended up cutting $2.2 million from the budget last night. And I think we did it safely. And I think
what was the most significant cut, if you could name one, of that $2.2 million? Where was the biggest elimination, or wasn't there any single cut?
It was a bunch of small things, and then I think one of the major cuts was we protect certain line items by enveloping them in some additional cash for the what ifs. And what we did was we removed a lot of that protective cash and put it in a separate account. We did factor in a little bit for variables because we're talking about workers' comp, we're talking about dental insurance, things that we know are going to rise.
Right.
So we did leave some protective measures, but we moved it into a separate account, and then part of that money we took out of the budget completely. So what happens is, if we guessed wrong, if we're off in our calculations, we have that money reserved to put back into the funds that need it.
Well, that's sound. I mean, you got a skinnier reserve or a fund balance or whatever you want to term it.
Right.
But yet you didn't go to the dangerous point where, you eliminated too much where you couldn't replace it in the event of unforeseen circumstances.
Correct. One of the council members wanted to cut enough out so that we would have a 0% tax increase. And there's nothing I would have liked more than to not raise taxes for our citizens. But I feel like what we're doing has never been done before, and we need to err on the side of caution because at the end of the day, we need to pay our bills, or we're going to have a world of additional troubles.
That's called responsible budgeting.
Yeah. So, this is, I look at it kind of like a pilot program.
Yes.
If we have money left in that reserve at the end of the year, well, we can look at those line items a little more closely next year. But I think, reducing our tax increase, and it comes down to, cents on 1,000 assessed value. is hard work and good work,
Yeah, it is.
and I feel really proud of the solution that we came to.
Well, good. And you also met Governor Cuomo's tax cap requirement, the city of Schenectady.
We actually,
Unlike some other municipalities, to which we'll rename nameless right now, but I think that's a good thing. It forces municipalities into, not that they're not trying to do a good job, but forces them to contain annual tax increases. I mean, long-range planning is one thing, but surprise and shocking tax increases are another.
Yeah.
And we can't budget like that at home.
right.
You can't say all of a sudden I got a 50% fuel increase, bam,
Yep.
and you have to pay 50% more. It has to come over time. So the city did meet the tax cap requirement, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, we met it under the mayor's budget also, and I know
Yeah.
that's very confusing to people, but it's based on the tax levy. So there's a very intricate formula that has to be go through. So even in the mayor's budget, when the tax hike was 4.1 and change,
Yeah.
we were still under the cap for the state,
Right.
and I know that's very confusing.
It is,
but-
because some people think that it means you can't go above a 2%
Right.
tax hike in a given year, but that's not how it works.
It's not exactly how it
Yeah,
works.
yeah,
but regardless,
But it's a good thing.
we
It's a
reduced
good
it
measure.
even further.
Yeah, thank
so
you.
that's
Good.
that's a good thing.
Good.
And I know I just want to mention, I know there was a lot of concern for Commissioner Bennett's position.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it just wasn't reported accurately.
Mm-hmm.
We were having a very casual conversation about some legislation that passed that allows Commissioner Bennett to discipline police cases, and we
Mm-hmm.
were like, okay, well, what does that legislation require of us? Do we have to have a commissioner? Do we have to have a police chief? We were kind of
Yeah.
discussing, and I think some things were taken out of context. So regardless, it's a moot point at this point because we know that Commissioner Bennett is safely in our budget.
He's going to be in for 2013.
But, you know, I
yes.
want to clarify that because that was upsetting to us. And it
Okay.
was upsetting to us that Commissioner Bennett would learn about something, in that fashion.
That's
too.
never good.
So, and
yeah.
that wasn't our
Well,
intention.
it happens, and that's why Impact is a great
Yay.
venue here, for a forum for you to explain
Yeah.
to our taxpayers and city residents how those things work.
Mm-hmm.
What else is going on in the city? I see some vehicle use issues and things like that. Accident rates are down, which is a good thing.
Yes.
That's all good because that means savings in dollars and cents on insurance premiums, deductibles, so
Yeah.
forth.
I think we continue to look at the vehicle issues. I think that's still very much on our radar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most business kind of stopped during the budgeting process because we met every single night about the budget
Yeah.
for anywhere between an hour and a half to 3 hours.
Yeah.
So we've been really, focused on that because it was a lot of hard work.
It is.
But now we'll open our sites back up.
You know why I smile? Because, I was on the county legislature years ago, and I have empathy for all public servants. I think, especially the school board, there should be a statue in the park for everybody that puts themselves
I
out.
know.
And for people like yourself, it's not about the money, it's about public servant. The pay is paltry, if there is pay. But the people used to say, oh, you're on the city council. I'd like to do what you do. You only have to go to a meeting once a week or something. And I laugh, or up in the county, they say you go once a month. I don't think the public realizes how much involvement and how much time commitment there is. I know it's discretionary on a council person's part. You can go out and do as much as you want, but the mandatory things, the meetings, the budget sessions, the committee meetings, the special meetings, the caucuses, it's quite a bit of time.
Yeah, and it's returning phone calls to constituents
Yes.
and responding to emails and looking into new things and ways to better the city and community service.
Yes.
And, I take my job as a public servant very seriously, and I want
Yes.
to be as engaged in my community as I can be.
Yes.
Because more exposure to my constituents, and the more information I get, I think people sometimes think their voice doesn't count, and it really, really does. And I think we saw that in this election cycle.
Yeah.
Votes were so close.
Yeah.
But we look for feedback. We want people to come to public
Yeah.
hearings. We want people to email. Well, I can't speak for everyone.
Well, yeah,
I'm
you do.
sure
Like I said, that's-
my colleagues do too. But
Let's face
You know.
it, some legislators are more responsive than others, and some work harder than others, and that's just a given. And it's good to see someone like yourself, as conscientious as you are, that wants to communicate with the public. What are some of the most important, or say the the biggest complaints or issues that you hear from your constituents? It's
Taxes.
taxes, yeah.
Taxes, and people are concerned about the quality of life issues. The dangerous dogs, the
Yes.
graffiti. The graffiti. Honestly, I put a plea out to anyone who has ideas to get in touch with me about our graffiti issues. It breaks
Yes.
my heart. I live in Bellevue, and we've had a rash of tagging up there, and
Yeah.
it's so frustrating to me, and I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
I've been researching graffiti programs and things, but we're in cash-strapped times.
Yes.
So
It is tough. It upsets me too to see restaurants or public property or
Yes.
private property
yep,
defaced like
fences
that.
and restaurants
I
and
know.
churches and
Maybe imposition of sentences where, if they catch them, the violators, they have them publicly remove it or,
yeah.
maybe embarrass them a little bit. I don't know how it works with the judicial system, but that is an issue. And major problems today are in the neighborhoods too. I mean, things are going well. Downtown Metroplex, bricks and mortar, and it's great. We have a wonderful downtown, beautiful Proctors facility, which you're no stranger to. But we've got to work on the neighborhoods, and I'm
Yes.
glad to hear you're doing that.
Well, I think the Mayor's Home Program is a wonderful program.
Yeah.
And the city's getting serious about foreclosures, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Well, I think we're about out of time, unfortunately, but it's great that you could stop by and visit with us.
thank you, Nick.
We're visiting with Leesa Perazzo, and Leesa is a member of the Schenectady City Council, and she came to give us an update on what's going on in Schenectady. Thanks for coming, and we hope
Thank
you come
you.
back and be a guest again on Impact.
I would love to.
Great. Thanks,
Thanks
Leesa.
a lot, Nick.
Okay, great. You've been watching Impact. I'm Nick Barber, your host. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Proctors, bringing the best in arts, education, and entertainment.